Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. This week we are going to take this massive pile of bowl blanks and convert them into rough turn bowls, and along with that we're going to do some coring, and it'd be interesting to see how many bowls I can get out of this stack of hardwood. That's next. Before we start, I just want to point something out. I put some anchor seal on these. These are going to be either hollow form vase blanks or possibly even urns. So they were purposely cut like this so that we, be able to put a little bit of resin in them down in here. This one here is a real good example. There's going to be quite a bit on that one. So I don't know if we're going to get a chance to do these. We'll have to see. I've anchored sealed the ends of them, so that they should be good for a very long time before anything major happens to them split wise. So I've also put up a plastic barrier. That way the shavings will hit it and then drop down, and then they're easier to clean up. Along with this, if you've got any metal equipment, like here's my planer in behind this. So these shavings that are going to come off these bowl blanks are wet. So if they land on any of your equipment, of course, any metal equipment, it's going to rust. So I think that we're all right there. It's probably at almost 7 feet in height, but really ideally another foot, 8 feet probably would be ideal. And it's just 2x4s and I think 5/8 plywood down there. I just got the chain on there to keep it nice and tight. And of course my gas can on the other side. All right, so let's get our first piece mounted on the lathe, and then I will show you how I balance it on the lathe, and we'll go from there. Oh, one other thing. So this is the 5/8 bowl gouge from David Ellsworth. I have in my inventory right now 5 of these. So as you grind these and they get shorter and shorter and shorter, well, it's hard to use them on the inside of any bowls. So what I do is I hold on to these, and all these short gouges are the ones that I use between centers, because you don't need the length of the tool to go in and carve out the inside of the bowl. So, I in my red cabinet over there, I probably got about 8 of these actually, and they're just almost too short that I can't sharpen them with the jig, but right now they're good. So that's typically how I use up my gouges. I'll leave the long ones when I take out the inside on the outboard end of the lathe, and all these shorties, I use them when I'm turning between centers, just the outside profile. All right, let's get our first piece on. All right, so now that we got our blank mounted on the lathe and it's just loosely on there right now, I'm trying to balance the piece. And what I mean by balance is this. So the rings at this is going to be the top of the bowl, and this is going to be the bottom of the bowl. I want the ring pattern to be the same on each end of the bowl. So I just take my finger and put it on the banjo and bring it up here. And I set my finger in one spot. Say I want right in the center of this grain right here. So I'll put my finger like this on the banjo, hold it there, and rotate the piece, and it's pretty much spot on. It's got to come forward a little bit, so just loosen off the lathe a bit here. And this is why you put it in there very loosely. Check that. Way too much. There you go. That looks balanced to me. Now, is this secure? Absolutely. I don't have any issues. I'll stand in front of this. I'm not worried about this going anywhere. Is a faceplate on the inside of this better? Sure. The problem is when you put a faceplate on there, you're committed and you cannot move this back and forth to line up the grain to balance out the piece. So that's why I always typically just pinch between centers when I'm roughing the outside profile, and that way I can control that easier than having a faceplate on the inside of it. Because once that goes on there, that's it. You're committed, there's no changing it. Let's take a few passes on this and see what we're looking at. So the other thing is I usually use a face shield when I'm rough turning. I use my respirator when I'm finished turning and sanding and that kind of business. But I usually just wear a face shield when I'm roughing out. With all of that said, if your chainsaw work is spot on, then you know what? Yeah, you can put a faceplate on the inside of that bowl and everything should be great. I do find faceplates time consuming, and that's another reason why I typically don't use them. Well, I don't think you can get any better than that. I'm more than happy with that. And then when this bowl is sitting on the table, it will look balanced and not all kind of cockeyed, if you know what I mean. That's 1,000 RPM. This is one of the most common questions that I get. What turning speed are you turning at? Typically, I dial the lathe up until it vibrates, and then I dial it down till the vibration stops, and then that's where I turn. There you go. There's our first bowl blank, the outside profile roughed out and ready for corn. I should mention that I do like to clean up the top face surface because what I'll do is after I get the outside profile roughed out, I'll anchor seal it and I'll just stack them on my bench over there. And once I've got all the outside profiles done, and remember that these are going to be anchor sealed, so I'm not worried about them cracking. They can sit there for months on end before we get around to corn. There you go. I'll just knock this point off and this point off with a chisel and anchor seal the outside of it, and then on to the next one. So going back to the previous clip, I do find that bowls in the 12-inch diameter range, I can typically turn those at 1,000 RPM. But it's like I said, put the piece on the lathe, dial up the speed. Once it starts to vibrate, back it off. And sometimes, I've had bowl blanks where, it's like maybe 150 RPM because they're so large and out of balance. And this blank is a prime example of it. I initially mounted it on the lathe. These really have only been sitting around for maybe, less than a week before I put them on the lathe to do this video. And you can already tell that, the outside of the bowl, it was a little hard to tell exactly where the heart kind of ended in this piece. And of course, we don't want any piths, the very center of the log. We do not want any of that in our work, especially up near the rim. If you leave the pith in your work, pretty much guaranteed that you're probably going to get a crack. And you can see, like, when this piece is mounted between centers, it actually, I move that quite a bit out of balance in order to try and get the heartwood lined up on this piece so that, it's not really out of balance. I end up missing it a little bit, but, it's not really that big of a deal. But, mounting between centers, this method, I think, is really the only way to rough turn the outside of your bowls. There you go. I couldn't really get a good look at the heartwood here, so I had to clean it off a little bit. I missed it a little bit, maybe by 1 ring. Yeah, 1.5 rings. So that isn't bad. That's This is a prime example of why you really have to be good with your chainsaw work, or else you're going to have kind of bowls that are all kind of off center until you're trying to line up the heartwood on the piece. So I'll just clean off the inside of this, and that's number 2. I often forget that people are not familiar with terms. So the heartwood of the tree is the center darker portion of it. Not all trees really have it, but certainly maple does, cherry does, so does walnut. And the pith, of course, is the very center. All right, so if you missed the first video, once I get these roughed out, like I said earlier, I want to put anchor seal on them. And this is anchor seal right here. And since we live in Canada, we get the glycol formula. That way it doesn't freeze. I will leave a link in the description if you want to get some. If you live in Canada, there is a warehouse in, I think it's Brampton, that they ship out of. American customers, you won't have any issues because it's a U.S. product. Other parts of the world, sorry, can't help you out. You can go to their website and see if they have distributors elsewhere. So it's just a roller. Literally been using this for years. I just keep it in a bag and just tie it up. That way it doesn't harden up, because what this is a wax. Before you put your wax on though, I like to date them and say on the bottom what they are. So this is maple, but I can see that it's going to be spalted. So spalted maple 722. This is cherry, so I just usually put a C for cherry 722. I'll even do this for walnut. You'd be surprised. If these sit around for years before they're used, they can get all dusty and dirty, and sometimes they're really hard to tell what they are. So label them on the bottom and you won't have any issues. The other thing too is these little nubs that are left over. I've just got this old beat up chisel that I use. Weatherman Tom sent me this. And anyway, just chisel it off. If you want to, you can also grind it off with a grinder like this. A lot of times I'll use the grinder instead of the chisel. Sometimes if you're too aggressive with the chisel, you can actually kind of dig in too far. So that's why sometimes I'll use the grinder. So anyway, I find it easier if you stack them on top of each other like this. And yeah, this is messy. But I mean, this is just a liquid wax. You don't need to wear gloves. You can put it on. And I used to use a brush to do this, but actually the roller is a lot easier and a lot faster to use a roller. So use a roller. And I know that this is an end grain sealer, but I typically will put it all over the bowl, including the rim, once the bowl's been done. The other thing I like to do is just take my finger and move any excess away from the tenon, because we're going to need to grab that and when we do some coring, and you just don't want all that wax in there. The jaws of the chuck won't have a problem going through it, but I don't know. I just like to clean it off. That's it. So we started late today because I was shooting another video. So we will carry on with this tomorrow, and we'll see how many bowls I can get the outside profile done on tomorrow. Also, the last thing I do is cover the bowl blanks in plastic, and then just put some shavings around the edge of it just to hold that moisture in there to prevent cracking. All right, so just for fun, let's see how many of these I can get through in an hour. Right now it is 11 o'clock. So as we watch me whittle away the wood here, from a wood turning business standpoint, and I know that there's a lot of aspiring younger wood turners, or maybe not even younger wood turners, that want to go, the professional wood turning route. So, when you're roughing out, there's zero money. You're actually losing money because you're not making finished products. So, it is best to try and get this done as fast as you can and then move on to finishing work where you actually will get a payday. You'll see, um, safety wise, you shouldn't move the banjo when the blank is spinning, but you'll see me do it very often because to turn the lathe off and wait for it to come to a complete stop and then move the banjo or the tool rest, well, if you look at the run while you're doing this, how much time that would eat up, you'd be probably quite surprised. I I'm very safe when I do it. Like I'm not going to if I've got something that's got some really long wings on it, I'm probably going to shut the lathe off. But keep in mind these blanks are already rounded on the bandsaw, so really there's not a whole lot that can really catch the tool rest. You will also see that, I overhang the tool rest maybe in some instances almost, 4, 5, 6 inches. And that's one of the big differences between a bowl gouge and a spindle gouge. You can kind of use and abuse a bowl gouge in this regard, where if you try to use a spindle gouge to rough out wood, you're probably going to get hurt because all there is a small little tang that goes into the handle, and then you're eventually going to get a catch, and that chisel can actually break off. The tang can break off inside the handle, and that chisel can go flying anywhere. So never, never, never use a spindle roughing gouge as a gouge that you would use to rough turn wooden bowls. As you've seen, I was just over at the grinder to sharpen my parting tool. I'm not going to cover sharpening in this video. There is a sharpening video on my account if you are curious. So please feel free to have a look at that so you see how I sharpen the tools that I use. The other thing too that I'll cover is, so before COVID, I would basically travel the province of Ontario here and sell my wares at these juried art shows. And those typically, of course, don't happen January, February, and March. Some of the shows start up in March. So when I would rough out, and it's actually a miserable time of the year to do it here in Canada, I typically rough out January, February, and part of March. And the goal during that time frame was to rough out, you know, 500 bowls in that neighborhood, and that would give me enough inventory for later in the year or the following year. As wood turners, we're always thinking a year ahead. My two fridge kilns can certainly speed that process up. And again, if you don't know what I'm referring to, there is a couple of videos on my channel here where I show how to make a fridge kiln out of recycled fridges and freezers. You also may have noticed me using sort of a little gauge there, and that gauge fits my one-way stronghold chuck, the jaws that I put on it, and it's the maximum diameter and the minimum diameter of the tenon. So, I'm kind of aiming for right in between there. That way I've got good clamping pressure, and you don't have pieces of wood flying through the shop because that's not good for your health and it's not good for your equipment, and it's not good for your walls either. I've got drywood walls, and this is my fourth workshop that I've owned, I think. And previous ones, there's actually been holes in the walls where pieces have come off the lathe and smacked the wall, and just because it's drywall. So um, there is some danger when you're turning, especially I think that if you're going to get injured while wood turning, it's probably during the roughing out phase. You've got a big heavy block of wood mounted between centers, and if something happens to go wrong, it could come out of the lathe, and you know if you look at where I'm standing, I'm usually standing to the side. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is for safety, because if it does happen to come out or come off the lathe, it's probably not going to hit me. And I'm not a real big fan of being hit with shavings as they're coming off the blank as well. These logs have been sitting around for a couple of years, so there's not a lot of moisture in these pieces. But if you've got fresh cut logs, you're going to be sprayed with water constantly. So, if you have equipment that's in the throw of the lathe, it may get covered with wood juice, sap, if you will. And so it's best to cover those with plastic as well, or things might end up rusty. Well, there you go. I'm out of time. Show you the clock. There you go, 10 after 12. And to be honest with you, I don't know how many of these I got done. I lost count. Let's find it. All right. Turn the air conditioner off there for a minute so we can talk. It's supposed to be 40 degrees Celsius with Humidex today, so it's pretty miserable. So we got 4, 6, 8. 8 outside roughed out profiles in an hour. That ain't bad. I'll take it. All right, so I'll just chip these little nubs off and get the anchor seal on them, because the AC unit is right there, and with it blowing onto these, it may actually crack them pretty quickly. So once that's done, I don't know, we'll carry on. Okay, so the term urban timber, of course, is trees that are on people's lawns and their yards and this kind of business, or just city trees, this kind of thing. And as you can see, there is actually 2 nails here, and it comes all the way through there. And it's funny because I cut that with the bandsaw, and I didn't really notice anything. So I'm actually really surprised. It cut right through that, and with high-speed steel, and these are probably just common nails, you can cut through this stuff, but of course it's going to take the edge off your gouge, so it's best to get rid of it. Telltale sign of metal in any wood is when it's black like this. I don't know how I missed that, but I did. So anyway, we got to dig that out. This is a fairly decent sized piece of maple, so I'll probably just dig the metal out and leave this as it is at the top. And when it's dry, then of course we can do some sort of inlay or resin or whatever. But this soft maple is really, really hard. I know it's been sitting around for a year, but man, it's cutting like hard maple. So anyway, get this dug out, and then I'll carry on and finish this up. Anybody that's been doing this for any length of time can probably tell you any number of things that they've found inside of trees. I've found large bolts. I've even found an insulator inside, the old insulators. I found that inside of a tree once. So, you just never know what you're going to find. Yeah. The gouge would have cut that off cleanly. There's no, the only reason why I even heard anything was because it was going tick, tick, tick. Oh, there it is gone. So I don't know. I could go get my metal detector and see if there's more in there, but I'll know when I go to turn it. So anyway, I find that these pliers, I have no idea what the technical term is for these. Fencing pliers, maybe, I don't know. They're great for taking nails out. I'd love to hear in the comments as to what you've come across over the years, what you found embedded in your bowl blanks. I've heard all kinds of different things. I even heard a guy, someone leaned a rifle against the tree, and over the years, the tree grew around the rifle. And then, of course, when he was processing the blanks, lo and behold, there it was. One thing that I try to stay away from is trees that are anywhere near a fence, farmer fields, because of course, a lot of times you're going to find metal embedded in them from barbed wire fences or whatever. One way around that is to cut the tree off at say 5 feet high, or maybe even 4 feet high, however high typically a fence would be. And because the metal won't grow and move up the tree, it will stay basically at the position that it was nailed into. Pretty cool. Not a fan of nails in my bowls, though, I'm not gonna lie. Alright, so there they all are with the anchor seal on them. I'm just going to keep punching this out and trying to get this done before I end today. I really would like to get this stack done here and then tackle the big stuff here tomorrow. Anyway, I will bring you back as I work through these things and if I see anything interesting. Alright, so there's another 10, this stack and this stack. Once you get into this bigger stuff, time really slows down trying to process that. So, a little disappointed. I was really hoping to get some more done today, but that's not bad. 18 total, I think it is. So that's all I'm really missing from what I want to get done today. I had to take care of some business stuff, or else it would have been. So anyway, I'm just going to throw some anchor seal on this and I'll be back at it tomorrow. So the next couple of clips you're going to see is kind of a bird's eye view. You can kind of see where I'm standing. And, you typically won't see me stand in front of the piece until, you're right down to taking your last few cuts. You'll note that I'm wearing a ball hat and it's on backwards. There's a couple reasons for that. It's because I'm bald. I don't know if anybody knows that or not, but I'm bald, and so I don't really care for the shavings landing on top of my bald head. Actually, I think if you had hair, it'd probably be worse. And the peak of the hat keeps shavings from going down the back of my shirt, which I find very irritating as well, or it certainly helps. This is a newish camera mount that I've got, so it gives you a really neat perspective as to where I stand. And as you can see, like I'm standing where I'm not going to get hit with the shavings typically, and maybe the last few cuts or passes that I take when things are round, that I'm standing in front of the piece. But other than that, I don't, like I said earlier, I don't care to be hit by these shavings, and I certainly don't like being sprayed with water. So anyway, that gives you an idea what it's like me working around the lathe. All right, so before I throw the anchor seal on these, I wanted to show something and point some stuff out. So this is a walnut crotch, and yeah, I could have cut it down to here to eliminate this, but on the other end, it goes even deeper. So, do you take 1.5 inches off the height of this bowl? And by doing that, it actually, because it's tapered, you take a lot off of the diameter too. You probably easily would take 1 inch off of the diameter. So you know what? I typically will leave this stuff in place and fix it afterwards. So there's that. That's actually a very pretty piece of wood. And these variations will likely all turn dark like this as it dries. That's been my experience with it anyway. This is a beautiful cherry crotch. That's what it's going to look like all up through the top of this bowl. And we'll get one core out of this for sure, but that's probably about it. And it'll be an 8-inch core. So this is about a 10-inch blank. That's how I measure stuff. And maybe a little over 10 inches. But that feathered grain, that's certainly what you want. And it doesn't go too deeply into this, but that's all right. And here's the last one. This is a piece of maple crotch again, and this really nice little burl grain. There's your There's your two hearts right here from the upper crotch. And again, you know, yeah, I could take this down to here, but look at the volume you're taking off of this bowl. So you know what? Leave that in your work. I've shown you how to repair it here on the channel, and you'll add value to it. Again, it's a beautiful piece of wood. All right, so I'm going to throw some anchor seal on these. I'll do a bunch more, and I'll bring it back if anything spectacular happens. All right, that's it for this day. So I did these 4 this morning. That's a really nice, clean black walnut blank. Should be able to get 3 total out of that. Get some butternut down here. Should be able to squeeze 3 out of that too. If you remember in the roughing out video with the chainsaw work, this is that piece of maple that it looked like a knee that I cut off. So look at the wild grain all around this big knot area here. So this is going to be a really nice bowl. The only problem is it may turn it into a hollow form too. I'll talk to the owner. It's Jenny, that's why her name's on the bottom here, but it goes completely through this hole. So, you know, you can't turn a tenon on the bottom of this and then core out the inside of it. So I'll put anchor seal on this, and then it'll go into my kiln to be dried as such, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do after that. Anyway, another cherry, definitely get another blank out of there, and walnut, definitely get 1 out of that too. And the problem you have with these skinnier bowl blanks is, you know, is depth. So you need like an inch, and you know, if you've only got something that's 2.5, 3 inches, then it's going to be tough to get 3 pieces out of. But anyway, I'm going to throw some anchor seal on these, and that's it for today. That's what we got left. 10 big pieces. I'm hoping to punch them out tomorrow. And of course, the the shavings are starting to pile up here. I've been waiting for the town to pick up my green bin so that I can load them up again, but they haven't been by yet today. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But anyway, I'll show probably 2 of the largest ones here tomorrow, and then after that we'll be moving on to coring. All right, well, that's it. I'm beat. See you tomorrow. All right, got my largest chunk of walnut on the lathe right now. Let's see how we make out with this. Going back to Jenny's bowl blank, that's a prime example of you never really know what you're going to get until you cut a piece of wood open and you shape it on the lathe. Originally, we were just going to do a bowl, and you know, there's just no physical way for me to hold that properly and safely where I could core out the inside of that. So, you know, we're going to have to shift gears on it, and you know, that it could be a bowl set, it could be, you know, just an individual bowl once you combine it with resin, so on and so on and so on. But this is a great opportunity to work on your wood turning skills. Like I said, green wood cuts a lot, trust me, a lot easier than dried wood. So, you know, I really recommend, if you are a new turner, to just get a bunch of green wood that you can whittle away. That way you get used to the gouge and the cuts that you're going to need to make with it. And it'll be a much more enjoyable experience for you. Of all the different types of wood turning, I really find roughing out to be the most gratifying for me. It's fun to, you know, have large shavings come off the wood, and this wood is actually kind of semi-dry. The wetter the wood is, the more aggressive you can be, and you know, the bigger the shavings will come off. To me, it's really cool to take a log to, you know, at least a roughed out form at the end of the day. I just find it very gratifying, that's for sure. With all that said, as I get older here, my body's screaming at me in the morning saying, "What are you doing to yourself?" So, you know, now that I've switched to YouTube, I just don't need this level of production anymore. Really, the goal with me going forward is I would really like to offer 6 videos a month. and get away from production work. It's just it's too hard on my body, even though I do enjoy it. In the future, what I may do is if I get a special log, I'll shoot a video on that and how many bowls we can get from that log. But I just don't need this level of production anymore. All right, we just got this beast done, but we have an issue. It's weird because I don't know if this is part of the crown of the tree or what, but there's all kinds of limbs growing out of different areas, so it must be. But as you can see, this crack goes all the way through to the other side here. And I'm gonna leave this as it is, but you know, this is kind of risky. So when I core this, I'll be able to clamp this together, so I'm hoping that, you know, this isn't going to come apart on us. But I certainly would not even contemplate doing this without tailstock support when coring. So we'll see when the time comes. I actually had to make it a little smaller than it originally was because I couldn't get my banjo underneath of it. So that's another issue. You know, one of these days I'm going to buy a 2436 5 horsepower one-way lathe, and I won't have to deal with any of these issues. But this bowl, you know, I probably took off an inch in the overall diameter of this bowl, and you know, that adds up over time. You think about all the bowls that, you know, you could have larger bowls and sold them for, you know, over the course of your career, it certainly adds up. So, you know, a bigger capacity lathe, one with a better tailstock, and one with more power is certainly in my future. This is a 20-inch General. It's got a 2 horsepower motor. It's all electrical, or it's all electronic, and of course you've got your step pulleys. So when you're up here, this is your weakest torque. Down here you get the most torque. Or sorry, that's not correct. Up here you get the most torque. So if you're turning really big, heavy objects, this is where the belt should be. And of course, if you're turning really small stuff and you want, say, almost 3,000 RPM, you would go here. So that's kind of neat with this lathe, and I know that it's not, a lot of lathes are built like that, and you know, there's a diagram that basically gives you the speeds. It's not a digital readout like a lot of fancy lathes are. And don't get me wrong, this is a great lathe, but you know what, it's too small because I really want to get into really large hollow forms as well. And this has been a great lathe, but soon it'll be time to upgrade. Anyway, I'm just going to bash on and get these all done. And if anything wild and wacky happens, I'll bring it back. But this is a beautiful piece of butternut. Look at the chatoyance there. Oh yeah. So nice. This is something I do as well while I'm roughing out until I can get around to putting the anchor seal on it. I'll throw the bowls down in the shavings and then just throw shavings on top of them. And then that way they won't dry out until you can get them anchor sealed. All right, so I just wanted to point this out to you. We finally got the outside profiles all done on these bowls. There are 44 bowls here. Some didn't make it. These will be castings. They're just too sketchy to turn. Everything else, well, the vast majority of it can be cored. I mean, there's some big value here. These got anchor seal on them. You know, there's these walnut and butternut blanks are some pretty big dollar bowl blanks. One last thing that I wanted to show you before we close it down for today. If you notice, I've got this piece of wood bolted to the wall in front of my lathe. And that's a reminder to me that, you know, doesn't matter how safe you are, bad things can happen. Years ago, I had that pinched between centers. Well, you know, the other piece obviously was all together. And I was just taking up some finishing cuts and it came apart and hit me in the chest, knocked me off my feet. Luckily, I wasn't injured. I certainly could have if it hit me in the upper chest. If it had hit me in the face, well, it would not have been good, or in the head or in the throat. So, you know, it just goes to show you that, you know, I'm as safe as I think that I possibly can be. And even though I was taking all the proper safety precautions, it still happened to me. So, yeah, I was mounted between centers, and anyway, it knocked me off my feet, and I had to reach up and hit the emergency shut off. And I was very, very fortunate that I wasn't injured. So, I bolted that on the wall just as a reminder that anything can happen to you at any time. So, on that note, we'll see you guys tomorrow for coring. We are all set up for coring. This is the one-way coring system. Comes with a whole bunch of different knife sizes. I have the set that fits 20-inch lathe. I've got it set up with my number 3 spacer in right now. And we're going to go for the big core first. And then the reason why I put this tenon on here, of course, is so that we can grab this with the chuck on the outboard end. And I can turn another foot on the largest core, and then we can keep on going. Ordinarily, the way this would work was you would go for the smallest one first, then the next one, and so on and so on. I really want to use tailstock support. I think it's just basically the way this lathe is designed. I don't think that I can do it this way, because if you take this piece out, then you're going to have a further reach in order to hold on to or to basically support the larger blank. So you know what? I typically like to go for the largest core, and then once that's done, it's certainly less riskier. All right, so let's get to it. I've got a bunch of spacers cut here as well, number 4, number 2, and anyway, this is all laid out well on the one-way website, oneway.ca, and at the bottom of the page there's a media section, and Dale Nish goes through the whole setup, and he cores a very large bowl blank. And if you really want a coring rig, I do recommend this one. I should also mention that we are using the Core Pro cutter from Hunter Tool Systems, and you'll see that this thing will eat this stuff up just like butter with no sharpening. All right, that's enough talking. Let's get to it. Using the Core Pro cutter from Hunter Tool Systems has been a blessing. You look at the shavings that are coming out. The shavings are usually, when you do this, even with the one-way cutters, you typically don't get shavings like you see there. Maybe after it's been freshly sharpened, the cutter that one-way provides. This cutter is far superior to that cutter. One-way makes absolutely fantastic products, but I'm so glad that Mike Hunter has sponsored the channel. And if you do want one of these Core Pro cutters, there is a link in the description for American and Canadian customers. Anybody else, you'll have to go to his website and see if he ships to you to other destinations. There you go. There's a nice, big, beautiful butternut bowl, 15 inches across and 1.5 inches thick. I just need to clean out the belly a little bit here on the outboard end, and then it will be ready for the drying shed after it's anchor sealed. I should have covered this earlier, but I forgot to. So a rule of thumb is for every 10 inches in diameter, you're going to want to have a wall thickness of 1 inch. That's typical for most pieces of wood when drying them. Not always, but that's pretty much what I stay to. So, if it's 15 inches in diameter, then I'm going to leave 1.5 inches wall thickness. And that way, as the bowl dries and warps, there'll be enough material when it dries that you can then true up the bowl, and you're not going to go through the side or through the bottom of the bowl. So I mount the blank on, I measure across to see what the diameter of it is, and then set up the coring rig accordingly. The first bowl that I did was basically a demonstration to show you how it's done. I typically don't core like that. I will go for the biggest core like I usually said, and I'll chuck that core in the pile of shavings, and then when I can get at it, I will then turn the tenon on the bottom and then core out the next bowl on the inside. Moving back and forth on the lathe, I find, is just it doesn't work for me. I find it faster to just do all the large cores at once, do all the tenons at once, remount them back onto the inboard side, and then take out the next bowl. So there you go. The largest core out of this is going to be 10.5 inches. And then the next core, you should be able to get somewhere around the 8-inch mark out of the next bowl. All right, well, that's it. I'm just going to keep doing this. I'll bring it back and do regular updates. It's all kind of monotonous. And if anything spectacular happens, I'll bring it back. All right. It's the end of the day, but we've got basically the big cores cut from the largest outside bowl. Those in the back will not be cored. I may stick them on, I don't know, I might. We'll have to see tomorrow. You know, the Corporal cutter worked absolutely fantastic. The only issue that I find with this is that, you know, these are the shavings that you're getting from it. And what can happen is it wraps around the face of it and, you know, then it gets wedged inside of the bowl, and then it's kind of a pain to try and get out of there. But, you know, really shouldn't be complaining about having nice long shavings like that, because that's really what you want. So a little bit of fooling around with that, but other than that, this is worth every penny that you're going to spend on it. The shavings are starting to build up again. So far, I've filled up the 3 composters out there, 3 large garbage bags as well, and we've still got this. So now, can you imagine if I wasn't coring how much shavings there'd be there? I mean, there would be probably twice that. So anyway, tomorrow what I'll probably do is put the big bowls back on the outside and trim them up so you've got an even wall thickness throughout the bowl, and then throw some anchor seal on them, and then we'll address the other cores. Whew, all right. Actually, it was cool enough to have the doors open today, so happy days. See you tomorrow. All right, so good morning. Today, the goal is to reverse these and put a tenon on the bottom and get them ready to core, you know, the large ones like this, small ones like that. We'll just take the inside out and call it done. And along with that, we still have to thin out the belly of the bowls on all of these large outside diameter bowls. And hopefully we can get to these as well. Should be able to, but we'll see. So anyway, Peter Patter, let's get at her. If the large outside bowl is not the same knife profile as the knives that you're using, then you're going to have to do some trimming on the large outside bowl, and that is typically done in the belly part of the bowl. Up near the rim and at the very base of the bowl are going to be the correct thickness, but you may have to adjust from there. Now, I could turn these roughly the same profile, but you know, you tend to lose a lot of size off the bowl. So I don't really see the point in doing that. I don't know why I would take a larger bowl and turn it into a smaller bowl volume wise, just so that things look the same, unless you're going for a set that all has the same profile. Other than that, I'm just going to leave the outside bowl on the outside profile the way it is, and then whittle away what I need to do in order to get an even wall thickness throughout the bowl. Here I'm just removing the center of the small cores that I'm not going to be doing any more coring on. You'll also see me put on the larger bowls that need more trimming as well. So yeah, here's a nice big black walnut piece, and I like to take one pass throughout the whole bowl, and that would get rid of any fuzzy material that's left behind. But you'll see that I'll have to typically take more out of the belly area than I will at the rim or at the very base of the bowl. And when I'm talking about right there where the gouge was on its side, you'll see that I'll end up probably taking more there than most places. Some are worse than others. This one here is a really good example of it. I need to remove quite a bit out of there. So I'll measure the wall thickness on it and then have a look at it and say, okay, I need to remove this much. So there I'm kind of working in that's what I call the belly of the bowl. And then once that's done, then you know you're ready for your anchor seal. Yeah, I remember, oh yeah, I got this longer tool rest. I should be using that. I don't like to waste any of this butternut because it is a protected species here in Ontario. This is probably the biggest one. That was the crown piece. And again, it split where the tenon is, but when you clamp it with a chuck, it's going to keep that together. If that split was up near the top and it went through the bowl, I probably never would have turned it. And you know, do yourself a favor. If you've cut a piece of wood and you looked at it and you're like, I don't know, like I don't really know how safe this is to turn. Well, there's your answer. If you're mounting this piece on the lathe and you have concerns about it, legitimate concerns, then you know what? Throw it in the firewood pile or make peppermill blanks out of it. It's just not worth turning sketchy wood. So 7 hours later, here we are. All the big bowls have been all trimmed up, even wall thickness throughout the pieces. There's some beasts here. There's some large bowls, really large butternut bowls. Pretty awesome stuff. So anyway, the inside has been anchor sealed. I'm going to let this set up, and then tomorrow I've got all of the cores buried in this pile here. That way they won't dry out before I can get the anchor seal on it. So anyway, I'll kind of do something with these tomorrow so that I can stack more bowls on here to anchor seal them. And all we've got left is a couple of stacks in the back, and hopefully that will be it. So as you can see, I've started without you. These are all the cores that were buried in the shavings over there. There might actually be a few more. Along with that, these are the completed small bowls that were in there as well. So I've just thrown some anchor seal on those this morning. I'm not too concerned. This will probably be dry in 2 or 3 hours. Still got stacks of bowls to do here. So by the time we get through all of this, those will be ready. The anchor seal will be all hardened up on them and ready to be cored out again. Now in these next 3 clips, you'll see that this is my #1 knife set, and I don't even bother to move the support in. The cutter is cutting so well that you know I just don't really see the need for it. Whereas the other cutters, you'd be having all kinds of issues and you'd have to have some sort of support. Beautiful shavings coming off of this. That is why you need the Corpro cutter. This is a little tip. So this is my #1 knife set that I've got in here. So, you know, I set it up as to where I want, you know, basically 1 inch in the bottom of the bowl. And then just use a square and a permanent black marker and mark on your rails here. Now, this is just a quick reference to make sure that the rig stays square, which it should be to the work. If it gets crooked like this, to be honest with you, I don't know what the results are going to be, but probably not good. So I like to do this on the bed of the lathe, and believe it or not, all I take is some insect repellent on a piece of Kleenex and it comes right off. I have seen other wood turners that do a lot more coring than I do actually score the lathe bed. That way they don't even need any of these spacers or anything like that. They just set it on there and go. Anyway, that's an idea. Once I get these done, I will bring it back. All right, so for the inside of the bowls, I like to just use an old brush. This is the same Acre Seal. And I just swish it around. And again, you know, I do the entire bowl. I know that some wood turners don't, but that's the way that I've done it. And I've had pretty good results with it. I used to just do the very top of the bowl and the end grain. And I found that I was getting more cracking than I should be getting. So that's why I now do the whole bowl. I should mention, even though I'm using the Acre Seal, you can expect between a 10 and 20% loss due to cracking. Just like so. All right, I got about, I don't know, 30 of these to do. Once I get that done, I'll bring it back. Well, there you are. 92 bowl blanks, including these. Those are the small cores. We've got some pretty big bowl blanks in here. Lots of value, actually. I stacked them like this so that they can get air, and that way the Acre Seal can fully harden up. Nice big walnut pieces there. Big old ugly knot in that one, but we know how to fix knots, don't we? Yeah, so what I'm going to do, I'll sort this all out tomorrow because it's the end of the day, but a lot of these small bowls and those cores that you see there, I'm going to break them up into 2 sets and we'll do a giveaway. But anyway, I will kind of sort that all out tomorrow, and I'll tell you what to say in the comments if you're interested, and that way the comment picker can pick it. And yeah, like I said, I'll break it up into 2 lots. The mountain of shavings is getting much higher. It's pretty much level with the bandsaw table. All right, that's it. Well, all right, that's it for the video. Hopefully you can take something away from this in your production setup. You know, I know that there's a lot of veteran turners that watch my channel that, you know, they probably don't follow the same procedures that I do, and I would love to hear from you. Anytime that I can streamline things, like I said, to move on to finish turning, that's always best. I really enjoy this aspect of the business. I love using chainsaws and you know, just making shavings, especially when wood's really green. I mean, it cuts really nicely, and it's a fun thing to do. So what I'm going to do with the giveaway, like I said yesterday, it's going to be 2 lots. And I'm sorry, but this can only go to Canadians because this wood is not kiln dried. I can't ship it out of Canada. So I'm sorry about that. So the Canadians went out on this one this week. So what I'm going to do is all of these cores that you see here, I'm going to divide those up equally, cherry, walnut, and maple. And this stack of bowls that you see right here, this is going to be the other part of it. So I will divide those up equally as well. And what I'll ask you to do in the comments, and this is all I want you to put in the comments, is nothing else, bowl blank. That's it. I don't want anything else in there. If you have another comment, please leave another comment. That way I can that way when I use the comment picker, I can just look in for a specific phrase, bowl blank, and it will kick those names out. And anyway, I'll run it through twice, and whatever those 2 names that the comment picker picks, then that's where the bowls will be going. And I was going to make you pay for the shipping, but you know what? I'm in a generous mood. I'll pay for the shipping as well. How about that? It's the least I can do to the people that are watching my videos, and it's just a little give back for you guys. All right, so in total, there's 92 blanks here. Roughed out bowls, if you will. And of course, these cores. Along with that, I've got the 6 vase blanks over there, and I've also got 3 cherry pieces that weren't suitable for turning, like this maple piece. So they'll have to be cast in resin. So that's over 100 bowls, and you know, that's a lot. And you know, back in the day, this would be, you know, maybe 20% of my production a year. So I would go through this process 5 times to get enough products to go to shows. So you know, it's backbreaking labor, but you know, I really love this aspect of wood turning, and I know a lot of others do. I mean, there's nothing like seeing those ribbons coming off the lathe. I mean, it's just, I really like it. Okay, so that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you can take something away. Please leave a comment down below, and of course, if you need a CorePro cutter, down in the description you can get that information as well. And I guess that's it. Next week we're going to be doing another burl and resin combo, so make sure you come on back for that. And it's something that I'm trying something new again. We'll see how it works. I should start calling this the experimentation channel. That's what I should be calling this. All right, well, that's it. Till next week, take care, stay safe. Don't forget that bell. Please share my videos with your friends, and safe turning. See you next week.